The Galactic Academy's most prestigious examination hall fell silent as Professor Zixthala's crystalline voice echoed through the vast chamber. Representatives from 47 different species sat in perfectly arranged rows, their various appendages poised over holographic interfaces, ready to tackle the universe's most challenging academic assessment. Today's examination, the professor announced, her translucent form shimmering with nervous energy, will test your species' theoretical knowledge of planetary survival scenarios. You will have exactly 4 standard hours to develop comprehensive survival strategies for 3 randomly generated apocalyptic events. Jihan Martinez, the sole human representative, stretched her fingers and cracked her knuckles, a sound that made several nearby Glixians recoil in horror. She'd been looking forward to this exam for months, ever since Earth had been granted its first seat at the Academy. The other species had been less than enthusiastic about humanity's inclusion. The examination parameters materialized in the air before each student. Jihan read through the scenarios with growing amusement. Scenario 1. Complete atmospheric collapse due to solar flare activity. Scenario 2. Sudden onset of perpetual volcanic winter. Scenario 3. Invasion by silicon-based hive mind entities immune to conventional energy weapons around her. She could hear the subtle sounds of panic. The Etherian beside her began hyperventilating through his gill slits. The mechanoid delegation started frantically calculating probability matrices. Even the notoriously confident Drakmari were exchanging worried telepathic bursts. Jihan raised her hand. Professor Zixthala's attention snapped to her with obvious irritation. Yes, Human Martinez? Just to clarify, Jihan said, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. Are these 3 separate scenarios, or are we dealing with all 3 simultaneously? The question sent ripples of fresh panic through the assembled students. The professor's form flickered with what might have been annoyance. These are separate scenarios, each to be addressed individually, Zixthala replied curtly. Jihan nodded thoughtfully. Got it. And just double-checking. Which apocalypse scenario are we starting with this time? Because honestly, these all seem pretty standard. The examination hall erupted in chaos. The Glixians began chattering frantically in their high-pitched language. Several Aquarian students started secreting stress hormones that turned the water in their environmental suits a sickly green color. One of the mechanoids actually short-circuited. Professor Zixthala's form solidified to an alarming degree of opacity, a sure sign of extreme emotional distress among her species. Standard? She managed. Student Martinez, these scenarios represent extinction-level events that have historically eliminated entire civilizations. Oh, absolutely, Jihan agreed, already typing rapidly on her interface. We've dealt with similar situations before. Actually, the atmospheric collapse thing happened to us about 3 billion years ago, during the Great Oxygenation Event. Nearly wiped us out completely. But some of our ancestors figured out how to breathe poison gas. Sorry, oxygen, and here we are. She paused, considering. The volcanic winter scenario reminds me of the Toba supervolcanic eruption about 74,000 years ago. Our population dropped to maybe 10,000 individuals worldwide. Bit of a close call, but we pulled through. The silence in the examination hall was now absolute. Even the environmental system seemed to have quieted. As for the silicon-based hive mind invaders, Jihan continued cheerfully, well, we haven't faced that exact situation, but we've had plenty of practice with invasive species. Plus, if they're immune to energy weapons, that just means we get to be creative. Humans are excellent at creative solutions to apparently impossible problems. She began outlining her responses with practiced efficiency. For atmospheric collapse, she detailed emergency biodome construction using locally available materials, described techniques for synthesizing breathable atmosphere from native compounds, and provided contingency plans for both surface and underground survival colonies. She included notes on psychological management for long-term isolation scenarios and resource allocation strategies that accounted for population dynamics over multiple generations. For volcanic winter, she mapped out agricultural solutions including hydroponic systems, mushroom cultivation in cave networks, and geothermal energy harvesting. Her response included detailed calculations for minimal caloric requirements, seed preservation techniques, and methods for maintaining genetic diversity in small populations. For the silicon-based invasion, Jihan's creativity truly shone. She proposed a 3-pronged approach: biological warfare using Earth-based microorganisms that could potentially disrupt silicon-based metabolism, psychological warfare exploiting potential weaknesses in hive mind coordination, and guerrilla tactics that humans had refined through centuries of asymmetrical conflict. But it was her backup plans that truly impressed the observing faculty. Jihan had contingencies for her contingencies, alternative approaches for every major strategy, and resource-sharing protocols that assumed cooperation between survivor groups rather than competition. As time elapsed, other students began submitting increasingly frantic and incomplete responses. The Drakmari, known for their strategic brilliance, submitted a response that essentially amounted to evacuate to another planet. The Etherians proposed entering collective hibernation until the crisis passed. Jihan was still typing when the time limit expired. Professor Zixthala reviewed the submitted responses in stunned silence. Finally, she addressed the human student directly. "Student Martinez," she said slowly, "your response strategies, they appear to be based on actual historical events from your planet." "Well, yeah," Jihan replied. "I mean, we've been through most of this stuff already. Sometimes multiple times. Earth's kind of a rough neighborhood. Asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, ice ages, mass extinctions, pandemic diseases, climate shifts, solar radiation, you name it. We've been getting knocked down and getting back up for about 4 billion years now." She gestured around the examination hall. "Don't get me wrong, these scenarios would definitely suck to live through. But humanity's gotten pretty good at not dying when everything's trying to kill us. It's sort of our specialty." The other students stared at her in a mixture of horror and awe. The mechanoid who had short-circuited earlier rebooted himself just to process this information. "Your species," Professor Zixthala said faintly, "treats extinction-level events as learning experiences." Jihan shrugged. "I mean, we prefer not to have them, obviously. But when they happen, we adapt. That's what we do. We're stubborn like that." Later, as exam results were posted, Jihan's response was forwarded to the Galactic Council's Strategic Defense Committee, not as an academic curiosity but as a practical manual. Within a week, humanity received its first official request for consultation on planetary defense strategies. Jihan just smiled and asked, "Which apocalypse scenario this time?"